Babies are born with approximately 300 bones, but many fuse together as they grow, resulting in 206 bones in adulthood. Newborns can recognize their mother's voice within days of birth. Babies are born with the ability to breathe and swallow at the same time, a skill that diminishes after a few months. A baby's brain grows rapidly, reaching about 80% of adult size by age 3. Infants have a natural reflex called the Moro reflex, which causes them to flail their arms and legs when startled. Babies are born with blue eyes, but their eye color can change as they age due to melanin production. Newborns have more taste buds than adults and can distinguish between sweet, salty, sour, and bitter flavors. The average baby will sleep around 16 to 17 hours a day during their first month of life. Babies can hear sounds from inside the womb as early as 25 weeks gestation. An infant's sense of smell is fully developed at birth, allowing them to recognize their mother's scent immediately. Babies have a higher percentage of body water than adults, about 78% compared to an adult's 60%. Infants are born with a unique grasp reflex that allows them to hold on tightly to objects placed in their palms. Babies tend to prefer faces that are symmetrical and exhibit features typical of their caregivers' faces. The average baby will double their birth weight by about 5 months old. Infants produce around 10 to 15 ounces of saliva per day by the time they reach 6 months of age. A baby's skin is thinner and more permeable than an adult's, making it more sensitive to irritants and temperature changes. Newborns have a natural instinct to suckle, which helps them feed immediately after birth. Babies can recognize familiar songs or lullabies heard during pregnancy shortly after birth. Infants naturally prefer sweet tastes over bitter ones due to evolutionary factors linked to survival and nutrition. A newborn's vision is blurry at first. They can see clearly only about 8 to 12 inches away, the perfect distance for gazing at faces during feeding. Babies cry with different pitches and tones depending on their needs, such as hunger or discomfort, making it easier for parents to identify issues. The average crying time for infants can range from 1 to 3 hours per day during the first few months of life. Infants have a strong sense of rhythm. Studies show they can detect beat patterns even before they learn to walk or talk. Babies are born without kneecaps. These develop into cartilage during early childhood before turning into bone later on. Newborns typically lose around 5 to 10% of their birth weight in the first week, but regain it by 2 weeks old. Babies experience rapid eye movement, REM, sleep for up to half of their sleeping hours, crucial for brain development. An infant's heart rate is significantly faster than an adult's, averaging around 120 to 160 beats per minute at rest. By 6 months old, babies begin to understand object permanence, the idea that objects still exist even when out of sight. Around 2/3 of infants will show signs of separation anxiety between 6 months and 2 years old when away from primary caregivers. Baby teeth start forming in the womb, but typically erupt around 6 months after birth. Infants are capable swimmers. They possess a reflex called the dive reflex, allowing them to hold their breath underwater instinctively for short periods. Babies are born with the ability to differentiate between different languages, showing a preference for their native language by 6 months old. An infant's brain generates about 700 new neural connections every second during the first few years of life. Newborns have a natural instinct to crawl toward their mother's voice, which helps them bond and find nourishment. Infants can recognize their mother's face within a few weeks of birth, often preferring it over other faces. The average baby will produce around 200 diapers worth of waste in their first year. Babies are born with a natural inclination for social interaction, often mimicking facial expressions they see. Infants have a limited color vision at birth, primarily seeing shades of red and green before developing full color perception by 6 months. A baby's gut microbiome begins to develop during birth and is influenced by factors like breastfeeding and exposure to the environment. Babies typically start teething around 6 months old, resulting in discomfort as their first teeth emerge. Research suggests that babies can experience emotions such as happiness, sadness, and anger even in the womb. Newborns have a higher number of taste buds on their tongues than adults, allowing them to savor flavors more intensely. The rooting reflex helps infants find the breast or bottle. When their cheek is stroked, they turn their head toward the stimulus. Babies are capable of recognizing music patterns and rhythms long before they can understand lyrics or melodies. Infants have a natural tendency to prefer human voices over other sounds right from birth. A newborn's brain uses about 60% of its energy for growth and development during the early stages of life. Babies can smell their mother's milk from several feet away, helping them locate feeding sources quickly. Most babies will start to roll over between 4 and 6 months old, marking an important milestone in motor development. Infant laughter typically emerges around 3 to 4 months old and is crucial for social bonding and communication development. Babies can perceive emotions through facial expressions, often reflecting similar feelings in their own expressions by 3 months old. The majority of babies are born with a full head of hair, or may lose it shortly after birth due to hormonal changes. This is completely normal. Infants often prefer toys that make noise or have bright colors, because these sensory stimuli engage their developing brains. Studies show that reading to babies promotes language acquisition and cognitive skills even before they can understand words. Babies' legs are naturally bowed at birth due to the cramped space in the womb, but usually straighten out as they begin walking. An infant's immune system is still developing at birth. Breastfeeding provides essential antibodies that help protect them from infections. The average baby will go through about 3 to 5 major growth spurts during their first year, leading to rapid changes in size and appetite. Babies can express preferences for specific types of music by showing signs of relaxation or excitement when exposed to familiar tunes. Newborns typically spend more time in REM sleep than older children or adults, which is vital for brain development and memory consolidation. Infant skin contains fewer layers than adult skin, making it more susceptible to sunburns and irritations. Sunscreen should be used cautiously after 6 months old. By 8 weeks old, babies can distinguish between happy and sad faces, demonstrating early emotional intelligence skills. The Babinski reflex occurs when an infant's foot is stroked. Their toes fan out instead of curling inward as seen in adults. This reflex disappears after about a year. Baby giggles become more frequent as they approach 1 year old. This laughter plays an essential role in social bonding and communication skills development. Infants are equipped with survival instincts, such as the ability to grasp and hold onto their caregiver's finger, which helps foster bonding. Babies can recognize their own names by around 5 months old, responding to it with smiles or head turns. The average newborn's head makes up about 1/4 of their total body length, making it proportionally larger than an adult's head. Babies have a natural inclination to mimic sounds and gestures they see in their environment, which aids language development. A baby's sense of touch is highly developed at birth, with sensitive nerve endings allowing them to feel textures and temperatures acutely. Newborns are born with a fencing reflex, where they extend one arm while bending the other, a remnant of primitive reflexes. The average baby will crawl for several months before walking, usually starting to crawl around 6 to 10 months old. Babies can self-soothe by sucking on their thumbs or fingers, helping them calm down when upset or anxious. An infant's vision improves rapidly. By 6 months old, they can see clearly across the room and focus on distant objects. Babies develop preferences for specific shapes and colors by about 3 months old, indicating early visual discrimination skills. Infants often engage in cooing around 2 months old, producing vowel-like sounds as a precursor to speech development. Newborns have a unique way of breathing called abdominal breathing, where their bellies rise and fall rather than their chests. Babies can experience rapid weight gain during growth spurts. It's common for them to gain several ounces a day during these times. The average baby will smile socially by 6 weeks old, using this expression as a way to communicate and connect with caregivers. Infants are born with the ability to sense changes in temperature more acutely than adults, which helps them regulate their body temperature. Babies have a unique heart rate variability that reflects their emotional state. A higher variability indicates better emotional regulation and resilience. Newborns can differentiate between familiar and unfamiliar voices shortly after birth based on exposure during pregnancy. Infants typically begin babbling around 4 to 6 months old, experimenting with sounds as they prepare for verbal communication. The majority of babies will go through periods of fussiness known as witching hours, often occurring in the late afternoon or evening. Babies' brains continue developing rapidly until about age 5, with critical learning phases occurring during this time frame. The average baby will begin using gestures, like waving or pointing around 9 months old as part of nonverbal communication development. Newborns exhibit an instinctual walking reflex. When held upright, they appear to take steps even though they cannot walk yet. Babies typically start saying simple words like mama or dada around 12 months old as they begin verbal communication skills development. The majority of babies will experience colic at some point during infancy. This is characterized by excessive crying without an apparent cause. By 4 months old, babies usually develop the ability to track moving objects smoothly with their eyes, a skill vital for visual coordination and learning. Research shows that infants respond positively to rhythmic sounds. This is why lullabies are effective in calming them down before sleep. Babies often display social referencing, looking at caregivers' facial expressions for cues on how to react to unfamiliar situations or people. The average baby will experience their first solid food around 6 months old, marking a significant milestone in dietary development. Infants can sense emotional tones in voices, responding differently to happy versus angry tones even before they fully understand language. Babies are born with a natural preference for sweet tastes, which may be an evolutionary adaptation to encourage breastfeeding. Research indicates that the bond between a caregiver and a baby significantly impacts the infant's emotional and psychological development throughout life. Babies can recognize their mother's heartbeat while still in the womb, which provides them with a sense of comfort and familiarity after birth. The average baby will begin to show signs of attachment to their primary caregiver by around 6 months old, seeking comfort and security from them. Infants typically start to develop fine motor skills, such as grasping small objects, between 9 and 12 months old. Babies can use their eyes to communicate. They often stare intently at objects or faces that interest them, indicating curiosity and engagement. Newborns have a natural Moro reflex, where they throw their arms out and then back in when startled, which is a protective response. Infants are capable of distinguishing between different emotions expressed through facial expressions by around 7 months old. The average baby will laugh for the first time around 3 to 4 months old, and this laughter is crucial for social bonding.